Chief James Craig, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us.
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. So let's just let's begin with your vision, your overall vision for the city.
Well, first and foremost, especially with the uptick in crime, and certainly the fear that is created throughout our community, public safety has always got to be a top priority in Detroit. That's just a fact, because you can't have a thriving city unless it's safe. You can't attract in businesses, big or small businesses, because of safety. So part of that is continue to work very hard to create a safer city. That's critically important, but also growing our middle class. I was shocked as I started this race that we have 22 middle-class neighborhoods in Detroit out of 200. I found that data shocking, but I'm not surprised. I came in with the bankruptcy, and during the bankruptcy, 7,000 African-American families or individuals left our city, and they cited lack of economic opportunity, public safety, and then public school education, which is another area that I'm certainly passionate about. I recognize the mayor doesn't control the schools, but the mayor certainly can use the bully pulpit. The mayor can partner with the superintendent, and certainly it's that important to me that I'm going to have an educational secretary, someone that works in my office, that works with the schools, but also facilitating after-school programs, summer programs, because those efforts make a difference. I know firsthand, because even as a police chief, I launched programming in the schools, after-school programming, and guess what? Some of the most challenged children, it turned them. They begin to learn. And if we can't fix the schools, what does that do to our future? Direct impact.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, which is what I love to do, especially as a Detroiter, which I'm calling this series Detroiter to Detroiter, because my family still lives in Detroit. Yes. I have lots of family in Detroit. And the bankruptcy was a turning point for the city. Some people believe that we gave away our future. I want to start on the bankruptcy front with the Great Lakes Water Authority and the 40-year lease that we signed, which created this regional oversight. Do you think that setup is fair as it stands?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
What don't you like?
Well, the fact that, I get that we had to make some tough decisions during bankruptcy, and I wasn't part of the financial decisions. My focus was public safety, of course. But I would work real hard to try to find a way to get us out that lease. We need to have control of our water back. As it stands right now, Detroiters, we are paying for infrastructure improvement, and we shouldn't have to. And that's where we have to leverage state and federal funding to come in and assist with that. But that's important for me.
The lease payment is about $50 million. And a lot of Detroiters think that is fair. Could you renegotiate? How would you go about that?
Well, I've always had a knack to get in rooms and collaborate and try to find what works best. I don't have the answer to that right now. I really don't. But I do think there's an opportunity to do that. I hated when we sold off Belle Isle. That was another area I was very concerned. I grew up here in Detroit. I remember as a child going to Belle Isle, and to see that sold to the state. It's still in the city of Detroit, but it just feels different, and it shouldn't be that way. Also, we're paying too much for electricity. What about property taxes? There's just so much that we have to work on. This is going to be a heavy lift. I'm not going to sit here and say I got a magic wand and I'll be able to change everything. But what I do know, when I came in 2013 during bankruptcy, and we were talking before the show, just about how people's impressions of public safety and the police department, horrible. The morale of the communities was at rock bottom. The morale of the police officers, rock bottom. So I had to come in and really do the heavy lifting of changing those perceptions, certainly, motivating the men and women to go out and fight crime, because that didn't really exist, not to the degree it did after I got in. And so this is the kind of leader you get in me as the mayor, because I'm the only candidate. When you talk about executive level leadership, I'm the only candidate that has it. I've led and managed not 20 people, but thousands of people. The city has 9,000 employees. The police department had 4,300. So that matters. But not only that, a mayor's responsibility also is to handle a crisis. It's not the if, it's the when. I've handled so many crises and had to make split-second decision-making. So the mayor cannot come in with an on-the-job training attitude. It just doesn't work. You have to set the tone, and you have to execute on the mission for the city.
You mentioned Belle Isle. Part of this package also is the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. These things that are now sort of a public-private partnership managed by really a private nonprofit. The same can be said for the Land Bank Authority. The same can be said for the Detroit Institute of Arts and some of the deals that were made to keep the valuable art from being sold off in the city of Detroit. Do you think we should try to reacquire these assets and have the city manage it, or do you like the idea of a public-private partnership basically maintained in this city?
Well, I can't say across the board that I dislike private-public partnerships, because even as the chief, I entered into public-private partnerships with the Green Light
We'll
effort.
get to that for sure.
The Green Light effort is probably one of the big things, and when you talk about changing the trajectory here in Detroit in terms of violent crime, for example, Hilary, the first year I got here, there were over 800 carjackings. But here's what was more surprising than that. The community wasn't outraged over it. They were desensitized. The police officers were desensitized. I have never worked in a city, and I was a chief in 3 different cities, and where carjacking was looked at if it was just a car break-in. We're talking about a violent crime, someone at gunpoint. But here's the beauty, and through the vision of Green Light, because I wanted to try to figure out how to abate this kind of violent crime, and we did that. That Green Light was only the start, but the idea was on my last full year, so we had 800 the first year, and the year the last full year I worked here was roughly 200. Amazing drop in crime in that area. And so these are the kind of things that have to be done. I mean, neighborhood police officers, that was another effort that certainly began to rebuild trust in the community. And that same concept will be a similar concept that I would drive as mayor of the city.
I want to delve into Green Light specifically. You know, there were anecdotal assessments that Green Light is working great, and that around the areas where people have Green Light, they feel like it's safer. But then some of why we have so many shots of suspects is because a lot of suspects are caught on Green Light cameras. And it's not really a deterrent. They're still bold, they're still brazen, they're still doing things in broad daylight, and they don't care if a camera's there. But
well, I wish I could tell you, I would offer, and I know when we first launched Green Light, I would have to say it was a big deterrent, because I remember seeing images of individuals coming up to a location, whether it's a gas station, and they see the signage that says monitored by Detroit police, and they look and walk away. Now, what we will never be able to prove or show, no police department can do this, how many crimes did we prevent? And that's been my argument, because we don't know. Because what we do know, when we look at using carjacking, it's not accidental that carjacking significantly dropped. So we know it worked in that sense, because with the if we hadn't done anything and we're still seeing 800-900 carjackings every year, then obviously something's not working. But that did work. So I do believe it is a deterrent. To what degree, I don't know. As you point out, you deal with the news every day, and you see it. And you see shootings at gas stations. And I've seen recent shootings, and I'm saying, is that a Green Light location? Because I got to tell you, it became rare. Early Green Light, the way we marketed Green Light, really, it caused concern in the minds of opportunist criminals, because that's what they are. They're opportunists. They're looking for a place. And I'll tell you why, the other reason why I'm saying it was largely successful, we never had to go into communities and go to gas stations and said, you need to get a Green Light. You know where the pressure came from? Residents. Residents would go up to a gas station, and this is a real story, Southwest Detroit by example. There was a gas station that was non-Green Light. They went in and met with the management and said, look, if you don't get Green Light, we're not going to come here again. We can go to your competitor down the street. And so those things started to happen as well. The green light corridors, which yet is another example of creating safe spaces in the city.
And like I said, I've personally talked to store owners who've said that, yes, we believe that the green light has reduced crime around here.
Yes.
I've also talked to others who say they don't think that it's having any effect. But while it's difficult to quantify the effect of green light, one thing we do know is that the ACLU, for example, was very against the expansion of green light. I checked with the city, and they said they have some 1,000 locations.
1,000 right now?
Yes.
Oh, that's good to hear. It was 900 or over 800 when I left. So,
are you concerned about civil liberties, especially because NIST says black males especially are 100 times more likely to be falsely identified with facial recognition technology, and we saw that certainly with Robert Williams in that case.
Right. You know, I'm always concerned about that. You know, I led the police department in a very ethical and transparent way. Transparency is real key. I mean, people talk transparency, but what does transparency truly look like? Can mistakes happen? Absolutely. We put some very stringent safeguards up during my time, certainly approved by the police commission, that any violation of the rules associated with facial recognition, that's problematic. Now digressing back to green light video cameras, frankly, they're all in public spaces. And, you know, a shop owner certainly can make a decision, well, I don't want to have the cameras inside my store. That's a decision they can make, not the police department. However, most of them want it because they view it as this. This is my place of business. It's not private, and I want the cameras in there. So, you know, I vigorously kind of push back on the argument that folks will make that, well, you know, this is a violation of privacy. Now, I will say that, like ShotSpotter, I think that's amazing technology as well. But one of the pushbacks was if it was cameras that panned, that were on a pole, could they then, not intentionally, but look into someone's private residence? And so that's a problem. We wouldn't want that. So I'm very sensitive to any violation of privacy.
Let's also talk about whether you think the program is affordable. It can be up to $4,000 if you want to buy the system, and some people rent, as you know. It's $150, $180 a month. Is there enough access? Is it equitable? What do you think about the extant policy for green light?
You know, well, as I mentioned, it's public-private partnership. The beauty of it, and I would tell you, is no taxpayer dollars went to green light. The only taxpayer dollar, if you can say that, is staffing certainly our command center with technicians who are watching the monitors. Those people certainly are paid by taxpayer dollars. However, the actual Wi-Fi, the system that's inside the locations, that's on the back of the owners who pay for it, which I'm glad the majority of them take up, because here's the other byproduct of that.
So you do think it's affordable?
I think it is affordable. I mean, because you're talking about privately owned business, and this is what I've heard from business owners early on. This is early on, and green light says, you know, when I got green light, my business went up. I'm making more now than I did before, because it's a fact that more people, I mean, even now as a civilian, when I get gas in Detroit, I only go to a green light location. Only. I don't go unless I'm outside the city and I don't have a choice. But I patronize the green light locations. They're Detroit-based small business, and I'm confident I feel much safer knowing I'm at a green light location.
Does green light and in generally surveillance technology and facial recognition move us towards a carceral state where policing nanny state, and I don't want to describe you, I want to make sure that I'm correctly describing you, but you consider yourself to be a conservative, am I wrong?
I am a conservative.
You're a conservative.
Yes, I am.
So you're concerned
I was a conservative Democrat once too.
Okay.
I was born a conservative Democrat, raised a conservative Democrat, and as I like to say to everyone, the party left me, and so really I'm the same then as I am now.
You're concerned about constitutional rights as a conservative?
I'm always concerned.
Always. So are we moving towards a nanny state, a carceral state, where everyone is being surveilled? Does that worry you?
I would not want to live in a society where people are being surveilled, and certainly if it's based on race. Here's a sad reality. When you talk about surveillance technology, or when you talk about green light, I look at it through a different lens. I don't look at it as we're there to surveil. It's there to prevent crime. It's there to. One image comes to mind. There was a sex worker, in fact, was walking Woodward Avenue. I never forget it. And she was walking down Woodward Avenue, and she knew where the green light location was, a closed business. And she's walking down Woodward Avenue, public street. So as she's passing this business, she's stopped by a red pickup truck. Two individuals got out with long guns, shot her, robbed her, and took off. She's pointing up at the green light. Fortunately, we were able to pick that up, and we ended up arresting the perpetrators of that crime probably within 2 minutes. That's the win. And so I look at the world, and the view is, are we going to protect people, or are we going to protect criminals? This should be about criminals, not about, law-abiding citizens. I have a strong feeling about that. People want to be safe. And when I talk to people in the community, and see, this is where it gets difficult, especially with some politicians who I oftentimes wonder, who are they speaking for? Because I talked to Ms. Smith on the east side of Detroit, who says, I want more police. I don't want less. I want police to operate in a very ethical way, but I want police. I don't want defund the police. And so who's the victim? Are we making criminals into the victim? Because we should be trying to protect the public, because there's certainly a lot more good people in any city that we should be concerned about protecting.
To button up this topic before we move on to what the current numbers are and how to keep the trend moving downward and clearance rates, et cetera, pointedly, do you like the green light policy and the city's facial recognition policy as it is? If you're Mayor Craig, do you continue from where we are?
If I'm Mayor Craig, absolutely, because I know it makes a difference. The key is to reassure the community that there's not an overreach, and that anybody who violates the policy will be held accountable. I mean, people know in Detroit, I was never shy about being very public when I found police misconduct. Very public about it, and didn't shy away from it.
And that's fair. I covered many of stories where you were definitely calling out your own. Absolutely.
I'll do it, and because I tell you, there are more good police, and they want a leader that will do that. As mayor, I would do the same thing, because transparency and being ethical is so important. And when people look back at my time as chief, 8 years here in Detroit, judge me on that, not behind being a conservative, but the kind of work that I did in serving this community.
And being a conservative isn't a bad thing. I don't want to put any value judgment on it. I just wanted to make sure that I was using the right descriptor.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it up, Hilary, because it is a question. It's the elephant in the room, and people sometimes shy away from it. Not the journalists, but community members. So I openly talked. I said, look, I'm a Detroiter first. I was born in Detroit. I lived in Detroit. Yeah, I left because of circumstances out of my control when I got laid off as a police officer here. But I'm a Detroiter, and I have worked in Democrat-run cities, every city I've led as chief, and I have no issues. It doesn't mean we agree with everything, but public safety is so important.
Let's talk about some of what you did while you were on the job here and your philosophy of policing, which is a big part of it, and then we'll transition to the numbers. So I want to talk about Operation Clean Sweep, and you took a lot of flack because basically some national media especially were saying, and even local media, this is stop and frisk, this is unconstitutional. How many people are actually being charged? Is this actually keeping us safer? And Operation Restore Order. Do you think that that was the right tack at the time? And do you think these kind of mass raids are a good strategy today, or do you think they violate constitutional rights?
No, I don't. We still have to have reasonable suspicion to stop and detain someone. Stop and detain. And you can't just arbitrarily say, well, I'm just going to stop this person because they look suspicious. That's wrong. Now, let me give you another example. And let's talk about Miss Smith on the east side again. So what I found interesting as I was transitioning in as your police chief, there were two things that police officers told me they wanted. They wanted to be police officers again. And they wanted me to basically fire every appointed member at the top of the organization. Well, Hilary, I kept my promise. Now, I didn't fire every executive level member, but I did make some very aggressive moves because they weren't serving the men and women. They weren't serving the community. And I can tell you so many stories. We'll be here all night discussing it. So, apartment building on Jefferson, ironically, a block away from the Manugian Mansion, was viewed by many in the community, many who lived in that building, as the hotel that was shown in New Jack City. That's what they called it. Mm-hmm. The Colony Arms was the name of the hotel then.
Right.
So what I did to signal to the community, one, the police are back. That's number one. Two, to the cops, we're going to do police work again, because that's critically important. That's what we need to do. And so large-scale raid, mm-hmm. targeted, not random, targeted. We ended up on that first, oh, and by the way, in a very transparent way, and this is probably when I got the nickname Hollywood Craig, what did we do? Went in with news stations from around the city, mm-hmm. radio stations. I said, follow us, and they were amazed. 200 police officers. We ended up that first day, and we called it throwing a party. We arrested 40 individuals. So you know when something's right, people were leaning out of their window, clapping. You probably remember that.
I've seen the video. This was before my time when I was here, but I saw
right.
the video.
Right.
I saw
clapping.
the video of it.
So what I say to you is, I'm serving the people. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to like my style.
Okay.
But I will say that because we are transparent, I insist on it. I'm going to let you see what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is the right thing to do. It's ethical. I'm not out here saying, let's just randomly sweep. Like when you use the word sweep, it's like we're just sweeping up and using, it's African American city, and we're just randomly sweeping up young black men. No. And certainly if an officer engages in that type of police work, that's serious police misconduct. To randomly, now it may look to the untrained eyes, well, they just stopped this guy. I don't know why they stopped him, but they stopped him. And now he's in handcuffs. But you don't know why. And then if you found out that, well, it was a robbery 2 blocks away, he was wearing the same clothing, and oh, by the way, he was armed with a gun. Not everybody sees and knows that. Now I'm going to bring one other.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to go back in time, because what I want to show you is my character. So when I became the police chief in Portland, Maine, Portland had the 3rd largest African immigrant population in the country, only exceeded by Minneapolis and Columbus, Somali and Sudanese. So it was about my weekend, one weekend, there was a call that came out in a housing development. It was involving a Sudanese male dressed a certain kind of way, and the caller had said he was armed with a gun and was shooting rounds off. So get there, he's in handcuffs, and the officers quickly determined that he didn't do anything wrong. But here's the mistake. The young man was furious. They didn't explain why they stopped him. That was issue 1. Mm-hmm. 2, they just handcuffed him and said, I said, wait a minute. So I just happened to go to that call. So I went to the young man and just asked him a few questions. I said, take a walk with me. So I walked them over to one of the police cars, and I pulled up the call data. And I said, I said, I can't show you the name of who called, but this is a call, and you see where it's describing you to a T. Now, obviously, you don't have a gun. You weren't shooting. There's no evidence of that. But this is why we were here. He thanked me. That took all about 5 minutes, and that's the type of leadership that matters. That's how you set the tone.
And I appreciate that anecdote, but I want to go back to it specifically because it did strike a cultural chord here. It absolutely did. And I don't believe there were any convictions recorded. And you said 40 people arrested. We can confirm dozens arrested.
There were warrants, some warrant arrests.
Would you do it the same? Would you do it again?
Well, honestly, Hilary, I have no problem with what was done. And in fact, to me, now you have folks that talk to you, but you're the first person that brought it up as something bad. In fact, most of the people still talk about it to this day. They stop me. They stop me and congratulate me and says, I felt safer. Some of these are seniors who stopped me and said, I felt safer when you were chief.
And I don't say it's bad or good. I'm just saying that.
I'm just saying that this is the feedback.
I just want to know.
This is the feedback I'm getting, and certainly, once again, in a very transparent way.
Okay.
When I talked to community groups, and they said, tell us about the raid on the Colony Arms apartment building. And I go through the whole process. And then the second location we did, you probably were aware of, is the Martin Luther King homes. A lot of problems in the homes. We did the same exact thing. And once we did it, it set a tone.
But did it reduce crime?
Oh, yes, it did. It did at those given locations because there was a lot of crime in the Colony Arms. And oh, by the way, you should also know that I brought the CompStat process here to Detroit from Los Angeles.
I've heard you talk about this.
And very effective accountability tool. We know in real time where crime is occurring. We know, like in hotspot locations like Martin Luther King homes or Colony Arms, I could look back and say, did that effort have an impact? So I knew, definitively I knew, because what we did, so it didn't look like we were just staging up something like many politicians do. We're trying to say, look at what I'm doing. We went back and we threw what we call an after party. And it was phenomenal work. Fox News did an expose on my last day here. I was with Lawrence Jones. We actually did the interview in front of the Colony Arms, a totally different building, even to this day, because I live in the neighborhood. Totally changed that building completely. So I can say, and I don't have data in front of me, but I can tell you what, there's no crime going on at that location. If it is, it's very minor stuff.
I think from looking at the data after that, you know, there were questions, especially from the national media and many here locally. Did it have a meaningful impact on crime rates in that area? And I think that the data is somewhat mixed. You know, anecdotal responses from some people who obviously have come up to you and said that's
right.
one thing, but the question is, did it have a systemic effect? And what are the effects also on civil liberties? And is this effectively mass scale stop and frisk?
No, it's not mass scale. And I'm going to go back to that. Again, stop and frisk without reasonable suspicion is wrong. You've got to have reasonable suspicion. And again, we're not talking about random stops. No, I don't think anything's bad about it. In fact, I talked a little bit about it. I don't know if it was with you or in another interview I did. But equally important when you talk about reducing crime is also addressing the perception of crime. Do know that those raids, and I sometimes don't even like to call them raids because it sometimes has a negative connotation, but they had a direct impact on the perception of crime. It also affected the community's perception that the police are working.
And you said that.
And I'll tell you something else. When you drive, and you know, I was telling another journalist this not too long ago, I got PTSD from traffic. Traffic. I lived in LA for almost 30 years. So being exposed to traffic impacted me. I hate it to this day. When we're downtown, I'm sure you've been downtown and there's multiple events going on and back-to-back traffic. It shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have a city, and this was a big thing for me, where individuals cross Alter Road coming from Grosse Pointe.
Okay. They
cross into Detroit, and all of a sudden they're running mid-phase red light traffic signals. Now, your viewers, some of them can attest to this. So just say, come up to a stop. They don't even stop at stop signs.
Traffic is certainly an issue in the city. Like no question.
And it's
no
a public
question
safety issue too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've gone through that, I want to go through the numbers very quickly, and then I'm going to do a little rapid fire because we're getting close, and I don't want to keep you. I know this is a very, very important day. Right. We have seen a reduction in non-fatal shootings, 30% as of Friday, down year over year. We saw about a 16% reduction in homicides year over year. As obviously very well publicized, the record low homicides in some 60 years that we saw. Right. All of these things are very good, but honestly, car thefts still very high. 3,800 we've had so far this year. And it seems that this is still intransigent, the issue of crime in the city. So as succinctly as possible, what do you think is the first thing you need to do to continue the trends? Because we have made progress. We have to say that.
Well, you know, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I'll try to be as succinct as possible here. Neighborhood policing. And I'm not just talking about the concept, but actual physical individuals who are in the neighborhoods working with the community to address mainly quality of life issues. And I'm not going to diminish the importance. Car theft is certainly something that's been a problem for many years here in the city of Detroit. In fact, we who live in Detroit, and here I am a senior, and I'm probably paying the rates of for automobile insurance like I'm 16 years old. It's not fair, it's not right, and I don't have the answer to that, although I know the mayor did go into Lansing and try to fix that. So those are areas that still need to be addressed. And I know, and again, I can't make an assessment on what the police department is doing or not doing right now. There are things that are in place now that wasn't in place when I was there. We have to look at what works best, what's cost effective. And so I would have to take a very critical look at that.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of things moving through Lansing. I want to talk about SB 484, which would offer tax exemptions on foreclosed properties. How do you think this could help with blight remediation in the city of Detroit? Are you in favor of this bill? It could have a significant impact on our city. What say you?
Yeah, I would be in favor of that.
Okay, I want to talk about HB 4009, proposes lifting Michigan's rent control ban. Yes or no?
I think Detroiters pay too much for rent. I think that when you look at affordable housing, that's critically important. Right now, the city is in need of 44,000 affordable housing units. And right now, I think we have 1,900 in the pipeline. We talked a little bit about the land bank. You know, certainly that's something I would strongly revisit and revamp. Even though the mayor doesn't directly control it, the mayor does have some control. So there's a lot to that. So I think making housing affordable for all Detroiters is critically important, and it also have a direct impact on homelessness as well.
Slumlords have been an issue, not just in the city of Detroit, but a lot of communities around here. And there's a Senate tenant empowerment package which will grant rights such as rent withholding for unaddressed repairs and mandatory 90-day increase notices. So we're talking about if you're a landlord and you're not doing what you're supposed to do, it would empower the citizens to say, we are not paying rent. Do you think this is reasonable?
I think that is reasonable, but I also think that we can't always make landlords, and there are exceptions. We certainly don't want to make landlords into the suspects. I think we have to also, because landlords, if they own multiple housing units, they're a small business. And if they're doing it the right way, ethical way, then certainly people that are squatting those locations who are not paying, they should be held accountable as well.
Do you have a specific property tax reevaluation strategy to deal with the people who were unfairly assessed?
Right.
And what do you want to do with our property taxes now?
Well, I want the assessments to be fair. And the only way I can do that is to do a forensic look at how assessments are conducted. I think the formula is that you can't assess a house over 50,000. I'm not certain on that, but I would go in and do a forensic audit because that's very critical. That is a big complaint among Detroiters, and I've suffered it too. I've had a home here in Detroit, so I understand the importance. But going in and making an assessment of what's going on, make sure the assessors are properly trained, and most importantly, that there's accountability. And part of my plan addresses every entity in city government. I talked about CompStat. I'm also proposing CityStat as a way of holding managers in all these different city departments accountable and being able to track in real time what's going on with the assessor's office. So it is a big deal.
My final policy point, and there's only so much we could get into. We could go for probably 2 hours on all of this, but I want to talk about Detroit Public Schools Community District and Dr. Nikolai Vitti. I know you've said at previous events that you have trouble with the job that Dr. Vitti has done, and that if you had been in this role, you would have been fired with the results that he's had. However, in conversations I've had with Dr. Vitti, he's got students who are coming into school behind. Right now in the third grade, 11.7% of third graders can read at or above grade level. Only 11.7% according to recent M-STEP scores.
And guess what? That's horrible.
What can you do about it?
Well, you know, again, I don't control the schools. I mean, even though I've been very public about my dissatisfaction with the superintendent's absence of a lack of leadership, and I stand on that. Because again, as I've said in other forums, you know, as police chief, that grade, you're talking about 11%, when I was running for governor, was at 8%. And so we moved the needle to 11%. But see, part of it is this, we have to understand the root causes. You know, so I hear statements, you know, people say, well, it's the parents, it's truancy, that's the problem. But do we really understand the issue of truancy? And I would offer that, you know, and I have a lot of respect for the teachers. They're like the line police officer. They're the ones that's on the line doing the work, the critical work in our schools. So what if a teacher's morale is so down, maybe it's because of pay, maybe there's a lack of leadership, I don't know, that can and does impact truancy. Why? Because
and absenteeism, which is slightly different.
Absenteeism, right?
Yeah.
Not truancy. You have absenteeism, because these young people don't feel supported. Point in case, and I talked a little bit about City Camp, Children Trauma Intervention Camp that I started here in Detroit, LA, and Cincinnati. I asked the school principal to give me, say, 25 of your most challenged students who are doing horribly in school, not coming to school. And remarkably, it was an after-school program, 10 weeks, and a half-day on Saturday. And that half-day session was with parents and the students. 10-week program. Each and every time, at the conclusion of 10 weeks, those children turned around. We put discipline, but we showed them that we cared. And so I'm of the opinion that that could be part of the issue. But we can no longer just sit back and say, well, this is just the way it is. And I'm going to close on this now because I think it's important to say. So we talk about hiring Detroit, creating job opportunities. You know, I applaud, you know, Mayor Duggan for negotiating with Stellantis and opening up the first assembly plant in about 30 years, over 30 years. Big deal. Here's what was eye-opening to me. Now, out of high school, I started in the Chrysler plant, right out of high school, and basically I just walked off the street and got a job. Today's automobile manufacturing, you have to take an entry exam. So we're hiring Detroiters. Detroit Public Schools was too challenging, but one challenge, a significant challenge, was the inability to pass the test. That's why this is important. We want to talk about drawing in, you know, major corporations, but
education is obviously key.
It's a big deal.
I want to just, in 2 sentences,
okay.
What do you wish people knew about you?
Well, I've always been transparent, but I think, you know, the type of leader I am, certainly someone who's ethical, someone who's transparent, someone who you can look at my past and judge me on what I'll do as your mayor. again, I use the example. I mean, running a police department it's like a microcosm of running a city. I mean, I did serve as deputy mayor, but more importantly than that, we lose sight sometimes that, you know, the mayor is the CEO of the city. The city of Detroit is like a business. It's like a business. So inside of those businesses, you have workers, employees. So if you don't have an effective and motivated workforce, what impact does that have on the residents in the city of Detroit? Direct impact. We were talking before the show about some of the concerns that you as a Detroiter have had
sure.
about service levels.
Sure.
And really, the mayor sets the tone.
Okay.
I mean, I think Mayor Duggan did a great job in addressing some of the basics, drawing in large businesses, but the work must continue, and we have to put a focus, also a bigger focus on our neighborhoods.
Former Chief James Craig.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
it.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Appreciate your candor as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I love it. You know me.